Today I want to show that homemade dishes can be easy to prepare, healthier and more satisfying. Don't get me wrong, I don't think ordering food is bad. I just want you to know all your options. We'll start today with Chinese spring rolls, but in a healthier version, baked and made with rice paper without compromising on crispiness and flavor. We start by slicing a red bell pepper into thin strips and sauteing them in a deep non-stick pan without oil. Once the bell pepper softens slightly, I add a mix of shredded cabbage and carrots, the kind used for coleslaw salad. Of course, you can also simply shred white cabbage and carrots yourself. I like to add mushroom sauce as well. It's a vegan alternative to oyster sauce that adds juiciness and depth, but it's optional. I saute everything until the veggies are coated in the sauces and the carrots soften a bit. Remember, they will continue to soften in the oven. I transfer the mixture to cool and move on to preparing the rice paper. I make a batter to dip the rice paper in, which helps it hold its shape, bake longer, and become crispy and delicious. Using the same pan, after a quick rinse, I dip each rice paper entirely, ensuring it's fully wet, flipping and dipping 4 times in total. I place it on my work surface, remove excess liquid and layer another wet rice paper on top. Then I add 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of filling in a straight line, leaving about 3 to 4 centimeters at the edges. You want the spring rolls to be compact, so rolling it is similar to wrapping a burrito. I fold the edges of the rice paper over the filling and press it gently underneath. I seal the edges to keep the filling inside but avoid creating too thick of a layer at the ends. Make sure the far end of the rice paper is wet enough to stick well to the roll. I brush the rolls with the remaining batter and bake them for at least 30 minutes in a preheated oven at 190 degrees Celsius. For the sweet and sour sauce, I mixed a few sour ingredients, some sweet ones, and soy sauce to mimic the classic restaurant style dip. I have to admit, this time I took them out a little early. I only baked them for 30 minutes because I was in a rush. Usually I prefer them a bit more golden brown for extra crispiness. But honestly, they were still super crispy and juicy. What if we could plan it out? Cabo for a week. I've also made these with cashew cheese and spinach filling, but I think the Asian inspired version is more flavorful and satisfying. Like the golden days at the beach, family buzzing in my air like the beat. Maybe you could chill. All the stuff I have up in my head, I just wanna do. Maybe if you come, then you can hang. This has become our go-to comfort dish lately, and honestly, I think it beats any pasta you can order. Personally, I find ordering pasta a bit strange. I mean, it's so easy to make at home, but no judgment. I start by preparing tofu bacon by cutting tofu into medium-sized rectangles, perfect for 1 or 2 bites. For the marinade, I mix low sodium soy sauce, maple syrup, barbecue sauce, smoked paprika, and liquid smoke. Optional, but it really enhances the flavor. For the characteristic bacon-like richness, I add coconut oil. This marinade is very similar to the one I used for rice paper tofu in my BLT recipe a few months ago. I coat the tofu well and let it sit for a few minutes. For the pasta sauce, I dice an onion and saute it in butter to bring out sweetness and creaminess. Plus, let's be honest, nothing smells better than melted butter in a pan. Once the butter is bubbling, I add the onion. Meanwhile, I put the tofu in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for about 20 minutes until golden brown. I also start cooking the pasta since I'll need the pasta water and the sauce doesn't take long to prepare. When the onion turns golden, I add 1 tablespoon of light miso paste for saltiness, creaminess, and umami. Next, I add half tablespoon of gochujang. I have IBS and a low spice tolerance, but feel free to add as much as you like. I stir and let the onion absorb the flavors. You can add some pasta water or plain water to help everything blend together. After about a minute, I pour in cooking cream. I prefer Oatly, oat-based cream. I add most of the cream, but not all at once. I gradually adjust the consistency. After 10 minutes, I stir the tofu to ensure even baking. I season the sauce with salt, add the rest of the cream and some grated cheese, and let it thicken to coat the pasta properly. The tofu bacon turns out amazing. If you like it saltier, I recommend adding more soy sauce or using regular soy sauce instead of low sodium. Juicy pasta paired with slightly crispy, meaty tofu is just so delicious. The miso and gochujang combo gives an intense umami kick with a bit of heat. Perfection. The final dish is coconut curry with katsu tofu. You can totally make just the coconut curry without the katsu tofu or the katsu tofu without the coconut curry, but trust me, it's so much better together. I love eating this with steamed sticky rice, so I start by washing and soaking it. I press the tofu for about 20 minutes to remove excess moisture. Since I bake instead of fry, texture is extra important. Then I chop the veggies. I especially love king oyster mushrooms in this dish. They turned out incredibly delicious. If you find them, I highly recommend adding them without cutting them too small. I dice sweet potatoes. You can use pumpkin instead. The best part about this curry, you can throw in tons of veggies and it always turns out perfectly balanced. Plus, it tastes just as amazing days later. Even after 4-5 days, it's still delicious. For the katsu tofu, I slice tofu lengthwise into 4 thin slices, about 2 centimeters thick, and season it with salt and pepper. I prepare a batter that adds flavor and helps the coating stick without being too thick. Before dipping the tofu, I coat it lightly in flour so the batter sticks better. The coating consists of breadcrumbs, panko, a bit of paprika, turmeric, and olive oil. I use one hand for flouring and the other for dipping in the batter and coating. I either press the tofu into the coating or shake the ball so the tofu gets evenly covered. I steam the rice while preparing everything else. For the curry, I saute onions in sesame oil. Once the onions turn golden, I add the mushrooms and saute them until they start to brown. They will continue to cook in the sauce, which helps maintain their interesting texture. At this stage, I start adding the vegetables, spacing them out by about a minute. Then I bake the katsu at 250 degrees Celsius and flip them after 10 minutes. If they look dry, I spray more oil before baking further. I add the curry paste. I used 1.5 teaspoons. If you prefer a spicier dish, start with a full tablespoon. For spices, I used curry powder, paprika, turmeric, garam masala, and after adding the coconut milk, I will also add salt. Now I add the remaining vegetables except for the broccoli and leafy greens. I pour in boiling water until the vegetables are almost completely covered and place the lid on. After 15 minutes, stirring occasionally, I remove the lid and let it cook uncovered for about 5 more minutes. I add the broccoli, cashews and coconut milk. I start with 500 milliliters, about 2 cups. If you're not making the tofu katsu, know that you can just cut the tofu into cubes and add it to the curry. I cover it again for 15 minutes, then add salt and let it cook for another 5 minutes. And here are the tofu katsu, fresh from the oven after about 25 minutes. Could you have guessed they were baked and not fried? The most important thing is to make sure the sweet potato and broccoli are soft. If they aren't, simply cover and let them cook for a few more minutes. Once the vegetables are fully cooked and I'm done cooking, I add the bok choy and spinach leaves, stir them in and keep the heat low for about a minute. I like to add a generous amount of coconut milk because when I store this in the fridge, it ensures that in the following days I still have enough liquid, so it's not just vegetables. Pro tip: to reheat the tofu, bake it for a few minutes at around 200 degrees. This will make it crispier than microwaving it. Dipping the rice into this sauce is incredibly delicious and satisfying. Here it is after 3 days. I just made a fresh batch of rice and cut the tofu into bite-sized pieces. Thank you so much for watching. See you again very soon.